Hi everybody, welcome back to the Crime Lab. Today we're going to be talking about French serial killer Madeline Mouton. And she is actually known as the Berthelot poisoner. Not many people use poison. A lot of people will actually just do it by hand, strangulation, using knives, guns, that sort of thing. She poisoned. And she is known to have poisoned 11 people in I'm going to attempt to pronounce this, Sidi Abbas, Algeria in 1943, 7 of which were fatal. So she was born April 15th of 1910 in Évreux, Normandy in France. And she was the second of 2 daughters to laborer Jean Leveller and factory worker Louis Gabriel Leteau. I don't speak French, as I have mentioned in other videos. I unfortunately do not speak any other languages other than English. And so a few of these phrases, names, I am probably going to butcher, so I apologize to any native French speakers. And feel free to leave a comment if you know how to pronounce some of these names or cities in the comments. Then I can learn something. So her parents separated when she was 17, or not 17, my bad, when she was 10, due to her father's alcoholism, and her mother took both daughters to Corleville-Mézeres, and she attended school until she was 14, where she got her certificate of completion, which would be, I guess, most similar to like our diploma in the US for completing high school. And a lot of her teachers and other classmates noted that she was a moody, vain child who quite often lied and claimed that she was from a noble family and would often carry an empty violin case so that people would think that she was a musician. And at 17, unfortunately, she attempted suicide by drinking petrol, which is gasoline, for people that don't live outside of the US. And then while working at a train station, when she was about 18, so this would have been 1928, she met Clement Mouton, who she met him at a train station and she married him in 1928. And they had their first child in 1933, and she was apparently extremely nervous about her pregnancy, which I know a lot of women become very nervous, anxious, especially with their first pregnancy. So then Clement, her husband, later joined the mobile gendarmerie, so similar to like police or security. And during his time there, many people claimed that Madeline had an affair with an officer, and that caused them to temporarily break off their relationship. So then later on, the couple moves to Algeria in 1940, when Clement asked to be transferred to Constantine in Algeria with Madeline. So she claimed while they were there that the climate, because Algeria is a very different climate to France, disturbed her life and caused her to have frequent affairs, drink heavily, and prioritize her sex life. And then during this time, she actually carried a baby to term. Her first one, unfortunately, did not go to term, and she had a very tough birth. And 5 days after giving birth to this baby, the child died. And due to her reputation around the different bases where Clement was working, this caused them to transfer frequently to Molière, then to Kazar Bukar, and then Berthelot in 1942. And then at the time, Madeline was actually forbidden to live in the barracks due to her reputation of sleeping around with the other people in the barracks. And so she moved in with a woman named Madame Des and then gave birth to their third child. And then later that year, she was allowed back in the barracks after she kind of proved herself to not be sleeping around. So then later on, the couple met up with some friends from France, as the husband was also stationed in Berthelot, similar to Clement. And at the time, she met Chief Berdader, I think that's how you pronounce it, who then started an affair with her. So again, she's sleeping around. And so at this time, she started taking out several loans and racking up quite a debt, and made a lot of trips to Sidi Abez, and she would spend several days there. And then in 1943, several suspicious deaths began occurring in Berthelot. All of them showed signs of acute poisoning. And they were all people that had had some level of interaction with Madeline. And of course, all of them, because they showed similar signs, rose suspicion with the doctors in the area. So then the rumors started spreading that all of them had had interactions with Madeline, and that she had been providing care and had shown some level of devotion to them. So then several other people showed signs and symptoms of being poisoned but didn't die. And some of these people actually included her husband, who was one of the people who survived. Like I said earlier, there was, of the 11 people that she poisoned, 7 of them were fatal, the other 4 survived. So then in late 1943 or early 1944, that's when the investigation started. Police in the area began investigating what was going on. So then they found out that Madeline was living with Madame Des, and she bought 200 grams of sodium arsenite from a local drug dealer, and she had claimed that it was to rid the house of ants, so kind of being used as a pesticide of sorts. Her sister had said that Clement had written her and mentioned his suspicions of his wife's activity. He was like, I don't know why she's buying all this stuff or doing all this other weird stuff. Something's going on. So then Madeline was then arrested in April of 1944 and confessed to poisoning 4 people but denied anything else. So, but they were able to finally get a rough timeline of what actually happened and all of the victims. So in January of 1943, Madame Leroux fell ill, and 10 days later, her husband. And she died, but he survived. He was one of the 4 survivors, which allowed him and his daughter to stay with her. Madeline allowed this man and his daughter to stay with her. Then April 1943, Leroux's mother-in-law died from poisoning. December of 1943, a man only known as Ben died from poisoning. So those were the ones that she was willing to admit to. There's several others that she's not willing to admit to, and so that gives us no timeline for how she interacted with them or what actually happened to them. So then after her arrest, she formed a relationship with a guard, fell pregnant, and was transferred to the maternity ward. Like I said, this girl got around. And she actually ended up not being pregnant, but had gynecological pregnancy. So I think it probably was more pseudosomatic, where she thought she was pregnant, so her body was responding hormonally and physically to a pregnancy, kind of like a false pregnancy. So then February of 1945, psychiatrist Antoine Perrot reported that Madeline was of sound mind and could be held completely criminally responsible. Eventually, she was charged with 11 poisonings, amounting to 7 murders and 4 attempted. The lawyer attempted to enter an insanity plea, but due to the fact that the psychiatrist Antoine Perot had said she was clinically sane, the attempt of insanity was denied. So then she was then found guilty, and on April 10th, 1948, she was executed by guillotine. Which, fun fact about the guillotine, if I understand correctly, the last use of it was actually around the time that the original Star Wars movies were being released. So, fun little tidbit. But this kind of reminds me of the almost Julia Tofana case. Not quite, because Julia Tofana's reasoning for doing the poisoning were to help women. This lady was just sleeping around. Just because she wanted to and she thought she could get away with it. Like many serial killers, they think that they can get away with it. But if anybody has any questions, concerns, suggestions for future videos or future series, feel free to leave those in the comments, and have a great rest of your day.